Okay, so thank you, Leanne.
Because it's a bit more informal and there aren't so many, I don't know whether you want to, I've got some things to say, but then I want it to be relevant and pertinent to you. And because there's only a small group, you can either ask questions or I can explain how I perceive when we're dealing with kids. So there's no one here that's in kindergarten or anything like that, are there? No one with kids in kinder?
Transitioning.
Well, she's transitioning. Okay, so there's basically your kinder, your primary school, but she's transitioning, so we'll work her from sort of next year, from primary school, and then you've got secondary school. And in secondary school, I usually break it down into junior and senior. So you've got your 10, 11 and 12, and you've got your 7, 8 and 9. And how we handle it, I think, is very different. What I like to do, and you know, I don't know, obviously I work at Monash Children's, so the other ones who go to Royal Children's, the nurses can do the same thing. You can ask us to liaise on your behalf. And I think one of the first things to do is once you've got a diagnosis, I think it's really important because usually what happens is the school is aware before you even get diagnosed that something's going on because you're missing school, you're not participating, you're sore, you know, you can't do things, and that's quite common. And so often they go, just let us know. Or you might get diagnosed and they don't realise, which I think rarely happens. But the first thing to do in primary school, it's the classroom teacher that you want to really link in with. And that classroom teacher is going to be responsible. But I think it's really important, if you want to do it, then with pleasure. But often the nurse can offer you a huge amount of resources. We can liaise on your behalf. I have a letter that I write that says, this is what the disease is that they've got, and these are the complications, and this is how you as a school can help. And it's very sort of basic. And then I sort of say, and I'm happy to meet with you, and I'm happy to discuss with you. And then when they go into the higher year levels, I usually write another one saying, now they're in, you know, because often they're at a different school, and I say, this is the one, and again, it's a very similar letter, but it's different because they're, you know, in a higher school. Hi.
Sorry.
So that's okay. But if you want to do it yourself, that's absolutely fine and get the resources off the nurse. So what you really need to do is first go to the school and say, who is my contact? You need to have a person. If you don't have a name of someone from the school, what will happen is they'll go, oh no, you didn't mean to talk to me, I was talking to them and it was Beryl and Beryl's left the school now and now it's Maggie's turn and Maggie's not there. She's on annual leave. No, I don't, this is all gumph and I'm not interested. Who is my contact at your school? In primary school, it usually is the primary school classroom teacher because they have them for pretty much everything and they can disseminate to the sport teacher or the art teacher or whoever. When they get older, often it's a year level coordinator or it might be the wellbeing officer. In some schools, all this sort of stuff falls under wellbeing and good health and so they have a wellbeing officer. That's like something that never existed when I was at school. We never had a wellbeing officer, but now everyone's wellbeing apparently, so there's this officer. So, but you have to find your point of contact. And first things first is, before you even sit with them and meet with them, you need to sit with your child, or if they're too young, don't worry, you can see from looking at them, or if they're older, you speak to them and say, what happens at school that you're struggling with? What can we change at school to make it easier for you? What's the issues? And often it's something as simple as sitting on the floor. You know, kids with arthritis, it's my worst position in the whole world, and if I could ban it, cross-legged positions, I'd be banning it for everybody. So the yoga people, but separate to that, I would ban it. It's a terrible position. But in kids, particularly in primary school, get on the floor, sit cross-legged, and they sit like that for an hour, and then you want them to get up? Are you mad? It's not going to happen. And they're going to be in pain now, you know. So, you know, that kind of thing. So you say, well, what's hard for you at school? Someone might have the top locker and that's really difficult for them to 50 times a day reaching or 50 times a day bending. They're really simple strategies that the school can put in place without anyone needing to know any issues or anything. You know, but it might be something like, I can never do the art class because we're doing sewing, claying, and they don't have those fine motor skills because maybe their fingers are flaring. Because it really depends which joints are affected and when. And as you know, with arthritis, you might have your knees, but then your fingers might pop up, and then your shoulder, and then your hip, and then your jaw, and all these different things. So you've got to be able to say, when these particular joints happen, they can't do this. And one of my biggest pet peeves is always for sports teachers. I make it so abundantly clear that you have to believe the child. Mm-hmm. And I don't know any child with a chronic illness who puts it on. I really don't. And if they do, in my mind, that says, and in my mind, if they do, that tells me that their mental health is suffering. that they need that extra time off when they're not coping and they're in pain. And to me, that's as good as needing a holiday as well. So if people aren't coping because for whatever reason, and you don't think it's the arthritis, that's telling you something else is going on. So there might be some issues with bullying, there might be some issues with being told off by teachers. I have a lot of feedback that sports teachers, until they're told, will go, come on, you can do it, get moving, come on, push, push, push. I was like, no. But, you know, if they don't know, then they will push you. So you have a responsibility to inform the school that your child has a condition, and this condition from time to time will flare. And often in the beginning I say, while we're getting them under control, or while we're managing to bring it back to remission, while they're in a flare, there are certain things that they can't do. And you need to believe them. And that's the end of the story. And then you give them, but you need to give them sort of examples. Like some kids never have their fingers affected, but we've had a kid who we cannot get the arthritis out of all of his fingers. We just can't. We've tried, you got good, you got bad. So yes, when he's feeling up to writing, he's got special pens and stuff like that, but most of the time he just uses a laptop. And that's okay. But schools are happy to do that. Schools these days are much more obliging than once upon a time they were. And if they're not, that's again a reason for your nurse. If a school is not listening to you or hearing you, you need to escalate it back to us, because we will then liaise with the school. And if we're not getting any love, we will then escalate it to the Department of Education. So it is not okay for them not to accommodate what needs to be done. But you don't just go in and say, well, help me. You need to actually have structured requirements and requests. And in primary school, it works really well with the younger kids. There's little pins and badges, and I can go into schools. I personally go to schools and for preps and grade 1s, and it works really nicely. Or sometimes the teachers themselves do it. They've got this lovely book, it's over there, called The Worst Pain in the World, and they've got a little Henry statue, like a skeleton that I've got, and I've got these little tattoos of skeletons that kids can put on, and I've got these little pins that the kid with arthritis will wear. And it's a really simple thing. And we explain that, you know, we go in and they explain that joints get sore and she gets really achy. And
I found that younger year levels tend to lose those pins. She lost them all the time. We started the traffic light system at our school.
It worked better with the dots.
With the bands.
Yeah.
So she had green for, which I gave to Diane, green for good, yellow for a little bit sore, red for very sore.
Perfect. That's an alternative.
So, and that way the kids don't have to verbally tell them.
Yeah.
They can
so we had, and we used to do these pins, which obviously they're not very good at. But the bands work, or even stickers in red and green, you know, and you put them on, and it's a visual reminder to the teachers and to the students, I'm a little bit sore today, back off, don't play, you know, chasey with me, or I'm not going to join in that game, or we need to do a more quiet game. So they're really simple visual aids that little kids can put on, and then you say if you're feeling good, you take your bracelet off. Because sometimes in the morning they're a bit sorer, but as the day goes on they get a little bit more, you know, flexible and feeling not as sore, and the meds kick in and stuff like that. So it's really important to have those visual aids. It's not when you get older, kids don't want everybody to know. So I think it's really important to keep, you know, it's a personal choice. This is your life and your condition and your body. And, you know, your kids don't necessarily want the entire class to know. When they're little, they don't mind as much. And kids are very, very caring when they're little. And if you've got the red dot on or the red blood, they want to pat your hair and they want to be really nice to you. But when you get older, people are like, it's private, you know, it's my private thing. But that doesn't mean the teacher shouldn't know, and it should be strictly confidential on a need-to-know basis for the school and for the teachers. I think that's really important. But you need to think about what you want and what you don't want. And I always say with kids at school, for example, you know, when they get them to sit on the floor, and even in some secondary schools, my daughter, when she was in year 10, was still sitting on the floor for assembly because the school did not have capacity for the chairs. So I always said, you know, if you can, put a couple of kids on a chair and she'll always be one of them, sort of thing. And that's all right. But if they really, really don't want to, they can sit on the floor but with their legs out in front of them. So if they don't want to be singled out, they can sit with their legs out in front of them. They'll find that a lot easier to get up from. So it's really a balance between not singling them out and making sure that we're caring for their needs and tailoring to what their issues are. So you do that, and in primary school I find it a lot easier. And again, preempt things. So excursions, incursions and camps. You need to prepare. Parents don't need to go with their kids to every camp. Kids don't want their parents in every camp. You can really trust me because I've had many kids ring me separately and say, please speak to my mum, please, I don't want her on camp. And you've got to understand that. And the reality is when they're in primary school on a camp, they're never too far away. And you can always go and pick them up. And if you give them a good camp management plan, it should be fine anyway. You know, and I always say, you know, once you get to know your child's arthritis, you can preempt. So I often say to parents, while they're on camp, they're a lot more active. So take the naproxen. Take it twice a day on camp. You might not have it every day in your everyday life because you have it in the beginning and then you kind of use it on a needs basis. But if you're going somewhere where you're going to have poorer sleep, probably poorer caloric intake because you don't eat the same quality when you're there, and if you're going to be doing a lot more active stuff, preempt that and give them the naproxen BD, you know, morning and night. It'll just help them get through camp and make the experience much more pleasurable for them. So it's a short-term use of a very basic medication just to help them enjoy the experience. So you need to think about those things and what you want to do. And often for camp, I'll say, like, if they've got a hike and you're all right, I'll say, look, I don't want them carrying a heavy pack. You know, they're all right to walk, but not with 10 kilos on their back. Somebody else has to carry it for them, or do you know what I mean? Or whatever it might be. But I still want them, even if they can only participate in 2 of the 3 days of camp, it's really important to be included. Being part and parcel and being normal is, and I say that really loosely, I've actually got up by my desk, it's this woman sitting there, very fitted with her daughter saying, oh mum, what's normal? And her mum goes, oh, it's a setting on the dryer. So I use that word very, very loosely, but they want to be part and parcel just like everybody else. So you really got to try and normalise a lot of the things. And if you can work out where their struggles are and where their issues lie, you can then liaise with that person. Sometimes in the lower things, they like a bit of email. Some teachers like a communication book, which is still very old school, which literally is an exercise book that you will put in your child's bag that the child can hand every day, or they can look in the bag and they write notes and you write notes and it goes back and forth to each other.
Classroom readers, so that the teachers, we pull them out,
they see it in the reader. So yeah, so some people still like that, the old-fashioned communication. You might say, look, having a bad morning, or you know, knees been playing up, or you know, and the teacher might write home, notice they limped a bit today, or weren't in there. And so that's quite nice. But a lot of teachers these days just give you emails, and you can email them and they can email you. But it doesn't really matter so long as you've got a point of contact at the school and you can cross-reference and liaise with each other and get onto it sooner rather than later. And as soon as something's happening, as soon as the child's showing signs of not being happy, not being comfortable, showing school refusal, that's when you need to hang on, what's going on here? Because the longer you leave it, it will not fix itself, it will get worse. And the longer you leave it, you're not just going to then end up with a child who has some pain and they're not managing at school because they're flaring. You'll end up with all these overlay issues. You end up with some pain amplification and then school refusal and then anxiety and then depression and it just sort of escalates. So it's really early response and reaction is crucial. As you get into the older years in secondary school, there's junior, like 7, 8, 9, and then 10, 11 and 12. 10, 11, 12 is really simple. Because 10, 11, 12 is all about your VCE, and it's all about preparing for VCE and going for VCE. And this is where I say to students, think about what you think you might need to put you on par with everybody else when you're doing your exams. Because when you do your exams in VCE, you must be on par with everybody. And plenty of kids have plenty of reasons, and there's lots of things you can ask for. You'd be quite surprised. I've got things for, and you fill in this particular application, the school has the booklet, and there's 2 pages for doctors to fill out. I tend to fill them out and doctors will read them and sign them, and that's okay. And basically what I've asked for, these are a variety of things that I've asked for. To have a sit-stand desk so that they can, you know, because often they need to have a 10-minute break every hour so they can literally go and do their stretches and whatever they need to do. And to have food and water available to them. I don't know why it's got to do that much, but hey, if they want it, it's going to make them feel better, no worries. To have their pain meds with them. So that if they are into a 3-hour exam and they're feeling a bit sore and they didn't want to, they can get up, take the naproxen, take their whatever they're on it, and they'll feel better. To have their pain meds with them. I've had heat packs and cold packs to be made available for kids if they want to put something on their back and the examiner goes out, heats it up, brings it in, whether it's a heat pack or a cool pack. What else?
Laptops.
Laptops, yeah. So instead they can use a laptop or a computer. And I've even had one kid have a scribe because he couldn't even use the laptop because joints were so bad, so he had a scribe. So, you know, so there's lots that we can offer to put you on par with your peers, but you have to ask for it. And you have to let us know. Because we just presume a lot of the time that everything's okay until you tell us. And I don't want waiting till, you know, the day before the application is due to say, actually, you know, so I always put it in their heads in year 10. I always say, just think about it, even if you're not doing a 1-2 this year, just think about it as exams come along, because it becomes more and more stressful. And as you know, stress can trigger a flare. So we don't want them to be stressed. So it's really important to show them that as parents that we are supporting them. We're liaising with the school very clearly with the right person at the right time, asking for the right things. And if we're not getting the answers we want, we're escalating to the right people. And that they are doing all those things. And if they're not, you can get us to intervene on your behalf. It's no problems. We're happy to fill in forms. We're happy to do things. You know, it doesn't really matter. And also I think it's really important for kids when they're in year 10, 11 and 12 to start owning. You know, we start talking to the child when they come in, or young adult really, when they come in, and we'll say, how are you feeling? Not ask the parents anymore, you know, and how are you taking your medicine? How are you going with your medicine? Because they have to start being able to speak up. And I found a lot of the time it's been very hard for kids, and I try to do it even when they're younger, to say, I'm sorry I can't do that, my arthritis is playing up today. And kids don't want to say it, and they're not very good about saying it.
So, paying attention to them.
Yeah, but they can do it quietly and nicely. Do you know what I mean? And it's really important. And even if it gets to the point where, I don't know what it's like with phones at school, and different schools have different policies. Some schools you can have your phone and take it out at lunchtime and playtime. Some schools you can't use it at all. Some schools, people, they carry it with them all the time. I don't know what are different schools' policies on phones.
I think they just changed it recently, no phones.
Next year is coming into play. Yeah, in
all public
in all
schools?
secondary public schools, there's no phones.
I like
next
that.
year.
I like that very much. So, you know, but if your kid can't get to you to tell you, they can go to the front office and say, I want to ring my mum. And then they can ring you, and magically you'll ring back and ask to speak to the teacher. And that's part and parcel of them learning to find their own voice, and learning for them to be able to advocate for themselves, and learning for them to be able to ask for what they need. But it always has to be done. The whole world doesn't need to know. The whole world doesn't need to stop. When they're year 7, 8 and 9, it's often, you know, and these are tricky years, because transitioning in year 7, unless you're at a school that goes right through, it's another major transition. It's a whole new style, it's a whole new campus, it's a whole new teachers. There's just, you know, everything's new. So they're dealing with that. And again, that can often trigger a flare. So again, I think it's quite important either to get in early if you can, like if your child's in grade 6 and you know they're going to year 7, maybe midway through the year, to be ringing the nurse and saying, hey, this is where they're going next year, can you touch base with the school? And I'll ring, my personal way of doing it, everyone's got different ways, is I always ring the school first, ask who do I speak to, you form, and again, I'm always put through the wellbeing coordinator, form coordinator, there's a VCE coordinator, there's whatever, and I say, I have a mutual patient who's going to be a student at your school next year, have a medical condition, I'd like to preemptively start a file and let them know, and if there's any questions and issues, and you'll be speaking to mum and blah, blah, blah. So it's all done. So they don't need to start school and have that extra business added on. So it's done preemptively. Now, I particularly am not very good about knowing when people are, so I rely on parents to tell me. So I do often say to parents, oh, what year are they in and when are they going? What, you know, and you know, say nice, oh, would you like me to speak to the school? Sometimes they say no, and sometimes they say yes. I've had one kid who literally has been with us for 8 years and only this year allowed me to tell the school. Absolutely did not want anyone at the school to know. And you know, they just thought he had really poor attendance and poor participation. But he would not give me permission. His mum kept saying, yes, call them, and he would say, don't you dare, don't you dare. Now, I'm not going to do that. It's his school, it's his space. School is for the child, it's their place, it's their space, and I'm not going to stomp all over it until they're ready to. And then he said to me, could you please let the school know? Oh, really? I said, yeah. I said, great. And when I rang them, the first thing they said was, we knew something was up. That's what they said. They go, we knew something was wrong, but they just would never tell us. I said, well, I'm really sorry, but I now have permission to let you know. And school after him is a lot nicer now. But again, I can't help him if he doesn't want to be helped. And in year 7, 8 and 9, there's camps. That's when they start doing some more longer camps. They also do a lot more activities. And then again, you don't have a classroom teacher. So that's when you need to probably find your convener or somebody. And then, of course, it's their job. And it's cynical, but the reality is if they drop the ball, you need to have a go-to person to blame.
It's also filling them in on like biologics. And
Yes, and I think it's really important. So one of my letters, with my letters, I always say if they're on an immunosuppressive. And I say, so you absolutely must let mum have a separate phone call if there's a case of chickenpox.
which our primary school been pretty like that.
Yeah, we get a care monkey general. Hi, there's chickenpox in the school, and I'm like, right, which class? Who is it? What's
Yeah,
going on?
and that's why I tell them, and it's in my original letter, so they can't ever say they're not. And in fact, when we start people on immunosuppression, when they haven't already been on it, because often they have to work up to it, I then write a separate one. Further to my initial letter, just to let you know they're now on immunosuppressive medication, this makes them this, that and the other, and chickenpox is a big deal and you must give a separate phone call to the parents if there's a case of chickenpox. And it's for that exact reason. I want to know who's got the chickenpox. If it's the kid that your kid sits next to in the classroom, I've got a problem. We've got a 72-hour window to get you in and give you a booster. It's called ZIG. It's a booster that we give you. It's an infusion that you get done. We've got a 72-hour window to give that to you.
Okay.
So I need to know who it was. If you're in grade 2 and it's the grade 6 kid and they play separate, I'll just say keep an eye on them, let me know if they develop any. But I really need to know. And that's why you need to know. And you need to know the who and the where, as opposed to everyone just gets, there's been a case of chickenpox in the school.
Well,
You need more detail.
Because of what happened with Eliza being quite sick when we had slap face and that going around, I've said to the school that I work at, I don't care who the student is, but I want to know the class.
Yes.
At least the
I
class.
don't need to know who it is, but I want to know if it's in their
At
class or
least-
another class. It's
Yeah.
very important because you've got this 72-hour window to get your booster. And chickenpox is a big thing. We're all over chickenpox. There are other issues, obviously, when you're immunosuppressed, of course, that makes you more susceptible. But chickenpox is a big one for us because if you do get it, you don't fight it very well. So that's why it's a really big one for us. But of course, you're immunosuppressed anyway. But I think we tell them ad nauseum. If somebody's sick and snotty, just stay away from them. I said, give me a hand to kiss and go wash it. Let me kiss it on top of the head.
Yeah.
I say, if it's your grandmother, kiss on top of the head. That's it. You know?
Horror story in class this Monday, in Josh's class. The kid next to him, who's his good mate, rolls up his booger, puts it on his hand. I'm like, I'm like, mate, and you
He's really
can't-
lucky to have D there. Double D.
It's like,
And you can't help that, and particularly in kinder and prep, they all lick each other.
They do.
Yeah, they do.
And it's this, and then let's hold your hand. Or it's this, and let's
Yeah,
hold your
they're
hand.
dirty, and that's what they are. And in some ways it's good, and we joke when kids go to kinder, oh, you're going to have them homesick all year, but they're going to have great resistance build-up, you know.
The
How much
first
do you
year's the
I
worst.
had a prep kid look in my shoe last year, so I know.
Isn't that sweet? So it does, it happens, but you just need to be a little bit more vigilant about it. But the reality is work out what you want and work out what your child wants. And then there's a way, there's always a way to get it. And if you're not comfortable or you feel like you're not getting anywhere, that's when you get your nurses to advocate for you. It's really important, you know, if you're not comfortable doing it or you're not getting through or they're not taking you seriously, it's really surprising. You can ring them and say exactly the same thing that I say, and yet me saying it, I mean, I had a stupid one with you just recently, didn't I? Can I say? So Jen likes to wear a pant option to school, as most people, young ladies do these days, and they told her that, and she gets quite bad, and she's affected, her joints get affected by the cold quite badly, as probably a lot of you do. Some don't, some do, but Jen does. And she was basically saying, I want to wear long pants in term 1 or term 4 if it's a cold day. Because you get summer uniform and then your winter uniform. But let's be honest, some of our summer days are like winter days. So she basically said, I don't want to wear a short if it's a cold day. I want to wear long pants. Because it really helps, because underneath I've got warmers and I've got everything I need. And they went, no. And her mum, and they go, you know what she's got, you know her situation, you know this is a trigger. No, our uniform policy is our uniform policy. And it was being ridiculous.
I took great delight in saying, okay.
So like magic, I write a letter and say it's unacceptable, she needs to be able to wear a uniform. I've had kids who can't wear school shoes because their toes are all affected. And to wear a school shoe is, you know, they're much harder. So I say they can wear black runners. And it's because, and again, often school, oh, you can't do that. Huh, yeah, you can. You really can. Watch. And then magically, when I write a letter, all of a sudden they can wear their black shoes, their sneakers. you know. So, and adjustments to uniforms and backpacks and things like that, it can all be done, but for some reason the reality is that a parent is not always listened to. And whether it's because they think you're biased or you're oversensitive or you're whatever the reason is, this is how it works. So that's when you need to use your nurses and your doctors to advocate for you. And it's little things, kids struggling in shoes and having cold knees because they can't wear long pants because of some ridiculous rule that's not flexible.
Well, we had Eliza did football this year. EFL, like, you know, you're like footy. No, they've got to wear the short skin, bone skin. Can't wear long. Well, I wrote a letter. Oh, but no, she can wear long black skins underneath her shorts.
Who would have thought?
With a medical certificate.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've got to remember, you've got the power of medical certificates behind you. And that's actually, unfortunately, in this day and age, counts for a lot.
It does.
It really does. So rightly or wrongly doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, your job is to make the easiest possibility, you know, for your child at their school, wherever they're at and what they need. And so does that make sense?
Yeah.
So having a point of contact, knowing what you're asking for, and also explaining to them, and my letter always says this is a cyclic, this waxes and wanes, it flares, goes into remission, we don't know when. One day they can wake up good and then by the afternoon they're bad, in the morning they can be bad, in the afternoon they can be good, you know. And I often have teachers say, well, you know, they were limping around in the morning, couldn't play, but then sport time came and now they're right. I said, yes, that's arthritis.
Or they'll find this morning why they're limping now.
Yeah, and I say, yep, that's how it works. You know, that's often how it works, and that's the nature of the beast. The one thing I do often say is, I don't want schools ringing you to pick your kids up, unless you've organised something. School is not just about learning. School is socialising. School is peer friends. School is emotional. School is, you know, it's everything up, not just academics, particularly in the primary schools and the junior secondary schools. It's about establishing their sense of self. It's about making friendships. It's about give and take. It's about learning to compromise. It's about taking turns. It's all these things. So I want them at school. And my preference is for them to go to school later and still have a day or get picked up earlier. But I say try and be at school every day for at least part of that day, if you can. And if you can't, maybe you have a full day Monday, Tuesday, you get the Wednesday to recoup, and then you go the Thursday, Friday. And I think that's really important because socially and emotionally it's so important. And if you're not there, you can't be part of it, particularly when you're in your junior school. It's really important wherever you can. And I say they all have a sick bay. I much prefer that they say to the child, how about we give you a heat pack and, you know, whatever, and you can lie in sick bay and have a rest for a while, and then maybe you can go back. And sometimes that works, and sometimes afterwards they're too sore and then they need to be picked up, and that's okay too. But the preference is, rather than ringing mum, like I've got one school, who are probably the worst school I've ever dealt with in my life, who just ring the mum every day. And I just said, so I rang the school and said, you're not to ring the mother. She's working, she needs her job. You're not to ring her. The child can sit in sick bay till the rest of the day. You're not to ring the mother, you know. And the child didn't need to go home. This was a school who just wasn't prepared to do anything, essentially. So the minute she said, I'm a bit, so, we're going to ring your mother. And that's what was happening. It was really, really ugly. And I just said, stop ringing the mother. You know, and so they did, and it worked out a lot better. And wouldn't you know it, when she was forced to be at school, couldn't go home, she reintegrated really well. So, you know, the further away you are, the harder it is to reintegrate. So I really encourage them to be there all the time.
Braden's best friend's the ducted heated vents.
The
The ducted heating vents in the floor.
Yeah.
You go and sit on top of them.
Oh, nice.
When he's got sore knees.
Ah, ducted heating.
At Eliza's school, she's allowed to go to the cushion corner or a couch if there's a couch, and you know, they're really good at the school.
Yeah, and I often say in the beginning as well, a lot of kids, it's a really hard thing to get your head around, the why me, and it's not going anywhere, and it's not going to change, and no, this is probably, we can't say for life, but we do know that a very large percentage of our paediatric JIA patients go on to have JIA as adults. We do know that. So this is something they have to get their head around as well. So we get a lot of why me, it's not fair, and you have to take that into account as well. They've got a process. And just like you as a parent, it's horrific when you get a diagnosis. You really need to process it, and you need to absorb it, come to terms with it, go through that whole grief stage, and so does your child in their own way, at their own level, with their own capacity. So you've got to let them do that and give them a bit of space, which is why sometimes time out is really nice, and having a space to go to is really nice. And a lot of kids with anxiety, and a lot of kids develop anxiety once they find themselves in
kids
school.
into the staff room at recess and they're not coping out in the yard because they're too sore or it's too cold.
And there's a whole range of reasons, you know, and telling them that that's okay is really important, and telling them that you'll get there is really important, and you need to get around it as well. I was trying to think of something else that came to me while I was talking, and then it flew out of my brain. It'll come back to me.
It was about anxiety.
Kids with anxiety, no, but that's quite common, and I think we need to own that and accept that, and that's part of the process. You know, and they do settle down, but there are so many things that they can do in class. You know, there are so many little tips and tricks for all sorts of kids, you know, and depending on what the issue is. So you also, you know, with I don't know, it depends what joints there are. So if it's your bigger joints, then sporting's going to be an issue. And that doesn't become an issue when you get to the secondary school, because year 10, 11 and 12, year 10 you might do it at school. 11 and 12 you don't do it unless it's one of your chosen subjects, so it's not an issue anymore. But for some kids, and the other thing is a lot of these kids, we've all got extracurricular activities. We all take our kids to swimming when they're young. It's not an extracurricular, it's compulsory in Australia to teach your kids to swim. But we also take a lot of them to karate and basketball, and a lot of them into dancing, and they have to stop for a while when they first get diagnosed or when they flare. And that's really, really harsh. And I think it's really important to try and reintegrate that back in as well. Because you all know, arthritis is something that we aim for remission. Remission means no disease that's active. You might be on certain medications, but I often say it's no different to diabetes or epilepsy or whatever. It's a condition that we can't cure, but with the right balance of drugs, you can live a full, normal, healthy life. So we aim for remission. That's our gold standard, to get every patient to remission. But we do know you'll flare. But when they're in remission, the aim is for a long time. Sometimes to get to remission takes a bit of time, and the flares are never as bad as that initial time, because we know what it is and we know how to sort of step in and do the right things. And we know also what drugs they've responded to and which ones they haven't and what doses and whatever. So it's really important also to say to them, no, we're going to get you back to dance. No, you're going back to netball, definitely. And in the meanwhile, they should be going to cheer their team on if they're in a team. They're still part of it. And again, that's a psychological thing. It's very easy when you've got a chronic illness to slip into a woe is me, I don't want to function, you know, capacity. But it's the worst thing you can do for your child is to enable that sort of attitude. You know, I'm glad everyone's nodding. You know, it's really not helpful or useful for them.
Or it's a massive challenge to get back into.
Yeah, it is, and to reintegrate is a really difficult stuff. We've reintegrated people from 1 hour a day at school, one lesson, you know, and then coming back. And they're extreme cases, but they're not uncommon, you know, and they need to do it, and we want them to be in the right headspace and to enjoy school. I had a boy who came to me last year, and he's in year 11, and he said, we've got our formal, and we're doing, it's a deb, you know, the debutantes that they used to do with the set dances. And he goes, and I don't know if I can do it. Why? Because there's this move in the dance where the boy has to go down on a knee and then get up. So he can't do that. I said, don't worry, get them to change the dance. And he said, no, really. I said, you should be able to participate in a dance, and if one step is stopping you, the school needs to change it. Rang the school, explained the situation. I went, yeah, sure, no worries. So now instead of bending, they walked around their partner. Who cares? You know, but he genuinely thought he was going to miss out on his formal because he could not do this step. But he didn't want to tell anyone. So I think lines of communication are really important. And whether it, you know, they text you, because sometimes kids do better texting you when they're older rather than talking to your face, it's really important that if something's going on, they don't try and manage it on their own. Because you know how they catastrophise and how they're not very good at, you know, and they're having a conversation with themselves, and then it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And then it doesn't have to be that way. So they really do need to engage with you or somebody else. And there is a solution for everything. I've never not found a solution. So you need to understand there is always an answer. School has a responsibility. Oh, that was my other thing. When you get older and even younger, if you have informed the school, and I feel very passionately about this, and I make this very clear to all the schools I speak to, if you have informed the school that your child has a condition, and that condition often can lead to time off school or difficulty concentrating, because when you're flaring, the last thing in your mind is learning your reader or your maths or whatever. You don't have the headspace for it as a patient who's unwell or flaring. That's okay, but I still kind of, if you can be there, be there. But what I say to the school is, it is actually the school's responsibility to make sure that they catch you up on missed work. It's not your job. If you're away on a holiday and you say, what has my kid missed? You know, can you send me the stuff, whatever? But I'm trying to change the onus. I'm putting the onus back on the school. I really think it's important that you say to school, I told you, and you know she's not here today and this week because she's flaring and she's been in hospital or she's had to go to a lot of appointments, she can't move at the moment. Please send us the work. And that's all you need to say. Then it is up to the coordinator in the secondary schools to make sure they email the student. Most students have email addresses in the senior secondary school levels, so teachers can email. A lot of them have portals like Blackboard, or there's different portals that even kids can. Do you have this? Like
Google
Compass
Classroom.
Google Classroom for yours. There's a whole lot of different ones where the kids can at home. And I'm telling you, if they're too sore to go to school, I totally get that. But they're not too sore to be watching screens all day or playing on their screens, which tells me they can then access their portal. They don't have to do a lot of work, but a bit of reading, no worries. Do you know what I mean? Like, a bit of reading they can do. Or you can help them, or print out a math sheet and say, look, while you're in front of the TV, see what you can do with this. And it also keeps them just in touch that little bit with schoolwork. And it also allows you to see where they're at. And it also makes sure, but I think the onus should be on the teachers. When you've told them that, you know, this is what they've got and they'll be missing, and you let the school know, look, they're not in this week, they're having a really bad week, they've flared, I expect the teachers to contact you. I expect the classroom teacher to say, we've been covering days of the week, or, you know, in the primary school, or we're counting by twos today. And that's something you can do at home. When your kid is in primary school, whatever they miss, you can actually do at home with them. So they can tell you we're doing fives, we're doing, you know, what we're talking about money, we're talking about states of Australia, or whatever it is. You can do that with them at home. So I've spoken to your teacher and they're doing A, B, C and D. Let's have a look. Sit on the computer with them. So you also have a responsibility to keep up their stuff. When they get to the secondary school, and I got no idea. Math methods, business management, even their English, I can't help you. But that's when it is definitely the teacher's responsibility. And, you know, once upon a time a teacher would say, oh, you've got to come to me if you've missed work. And I'm saying, no. You knew the minute this kid came to your classroom, they have a chronic condition that will, from time to time, have time off school or not be available to learning, and it is your job. And then, yes, if you email it or you speak to them or you liaise with them and they don't do the work, okay, now that's their problem, you know. But I also say that the teachers need to be more available to the student. But that's again where we come back to that initial thing that I said about really empowering the student to speak up. I want students, you know, and it's really funny because, you know, all these kids are young and they're not given all this independence. They get to year 11 and 12 and the teachers go, well, come to me if you've got a problem. Whereas they don't usually do that as a general rule in a lot of schools. So I think, you know, us telling our kids, speak up when you're sore, let them know you can't do it. Go to them and say, oh, what did I miss last week when I was away, you know? And if they can't do it, then you do it for them. But it's a really good skill set to teach them as well. And then when they are at home, because there are kids, like we've got a kid at the moment who, having said it, he came to clinic and we did admit him, who had like 70 joints. He was flaring. And he says to me, he's so funny, he goes to me, I haven't laid down flat and slept flat for 5 nights because I'm too sore to get down, get back up, and it's hurting, and he's got, you know, all sorts of plural, you know, it's just... So I get his phone, I go, can you give me your phone? He's a 16-year-old boy. And I open it, I scroll through it, and I find my number. And I go, oh my God, who's that? And he goes, that's you. I said, and you didn't use it? And he said, no, I knew I was coming Monday. I said, but you haven't slept straight for 5 days. And you got my number, You know, I would have heard quite clearly and quite quickly that he would have needed an admission. But he stuck it out for those 5 days, and now, you should have seen him, he's like this. Walking. His sister said it took about 40 minutes for him to walk from the car park in. And I said, oh, you're not going home today, you know that, don't you? And he's like, no. I said, well, you're not going home. It's not happening. You're going to visit us now in Hotel Monash. So, you know, he needs a bit of IV methylpred, because a bit of oral ped's not quite enough, you know, and that kind of stuff. But really, it's really important that they speak up and that they contact people. And we don't know, and often, and it's true, especially at this age, Jen's age, and you know, Josh's age, they're getting older. They try not to tell you, and sometimes you kind of notice they're doing this and then you go, "You all right? I'm fine." Because
Or it's not until they're in extreme pain.
Because pain is actually not what it's all about, because your pain threshold changes. As anybody would know, you know, when you have a constant pain, you adjust to it. But that doesn't mean there's any less inflammation there. That doesn't mean there's any less damage being done. You're just adjusting because you're used to it. So people come in and we say, oh, look at that knee, you're going to need it injected. And they go, it doesn't hurt me. It may not hurt you, but can you see it's twice the size of your other knee? They go, yes. I said, so that means you've got inflammation, yes? And what does the inflammation mean? What's happening? You know, and then we go through the whole, you know, so that they, because I like them to actually understand the process of the disease so that they get it. And I go, what's happening with all those inflammatory cells? What are they attacking if there's nothing there to attack? Oh yeah, my bones. That's right. And we don't want a knee replacement, do we? So let's have an injection. You know, like, and you know, they've got to be used to it. So pain is not always, because kids, particularly younger ones, the really little ones, rarely, they just walk funny. When they're really, really little, they just walk
They
funny.
can't verbalise it.
And then they just don't do a lot of things. So people think, oh, maybe their skill set, their coordination, whatever. But actually, they're just protecting their bodies. We all do it instinctively. If we have a sore arm or a sore leg, we all change the way we move and stand and hold ourselves to protect what's hurting. But, you know, so they need to sort of become, and as they get older, they become more familiar with their bodies and more aware of their bodies, and they do learn the difference between an arthritis pain and a muscular pain, and that gets good. And if in doubt, you check it out until it's been resolved. But school is really crucial, but having school on board is really crucial. Getting a contact person at school is really crucial. Making sure they don't make a big deal out of it if they don't want to have a big deal made out of it. And as I said, in the junior primaries, they all love it. And the kids are very helpful and supportive. But again, some parents don't want everyone to know, and you've got to respect that as well. So they don't want you coming into the classroom, and they don't want the teacher reading the worst book in the world. But a lot of people have had a lot of success with it. Who's read the books in the classroom? And useful?
I've even supplied one from the school.
Yeah. Well, you can ask me. I've got heaps of them, and I'm happy to give you one for your school library as well.
We've got
so
some here tonight on the table.
Oh,
too,
excellent.
to take
So yeah, I bought some as well. So you know, offer one to your school library, so that the kids have seen it in school and then they can see it again. You know, and that kind of stuff. And it's just nice. But when you get older, it's a little bit different the way you have it. But then you become more empowered as you get older. So, but don't forget about C's applications when they're older. I want everyone to be on an equal playing field. And it's really important. And what I often say is put it in preemptively, because you don't know when you're going to flare.
What is the C application?
SEAS, SEAS. It's the Secondary Education Assessment
schedule or something.
It's called a SEAS application. It's a
school will
booklet.
know
The school
about
has it. It's a booklet. 2 of those pages in that booklet, you don't fill in the whole booklet. The school fills in a bit of it. There's a section called physical disability, and it's filled in by the doctor.
Okay, so it's for high
It's
secondary.
for secondary school. It's for VCE exams. It's for VCE exams. But until then, though, until they do VCE exams, when they're doing their exams in the junior levels, and you know they're getting them used to exam conditions
Like NAT plans and stuff like that.
yeah, well, a NAT plan is one type that they do, but there are other exams. When you're in year 9 and 10, most schools start exams, so they put them in an exam environment and they put them in exam conditions so that they're used to it by the time they get to the actual VCEs. Now, in those situations as well, they can have special consideration just through the school. And you can say to school, we will be putting in a SEAS application because this arthritis is not going away. So again, for her to feel good about herself and to be on par with everybody else, you're going to need to give her a 10-minute break every hour, or you're going to need to allow her to have access to heat packs and things
It's
like
also
that.
a good way for them to practice their exam technique, because we used to encourage them, okay, you've got a 3-hour English exam, and in that time you've got 3 breaks. The smart thing to do is to you know, do your first bit, read the second question, have your break, go out, have your walk around and stretch, think about the question while you're doing it, and then go back to it. So start to
You
try.
can get
You've been
5-minute breaks every half hour, but I always don't recommend that because half an hour goes
breaks it
by
up a
really
bit too much.
quickly.
Yeah.
And it, you know, when you're in the zone and you're doing stuff, to be told, tapped on the shoulder every half hour, go get up, walk around, I find that very, very disruptive.
Yeah.
And kids have not reported it back useful. And you can't change. If you've asked for 5 minutes, that's what you'll be getting. If you ask for 10 minutes every hour, that's what you'll be getting. So you can't swap and change.
So I figure they've had enough disadvantage through their school years that if they learn to use some of their techniques well, you know, that can actually
Help
them out
them.
during their exams.
Yeah, so break it down for you, knowing how many breaks you're going to have,
Yeah.
or even just make sure, you know, if you work better at home with a heat pack, have a heat pack. There's not, you know, I don't care. And they don't care, to be quite honest. So when you're sitting for these exams, you want to be in the, what do you call it, like peak environment. You want to sort of create the most appropriate environment where you can reach your best goals. And a lot of that's going to involve making sure that you've got all your ducks lined up in a row and you can sort them all out. So for that sort of stuff that you need.
So would you send, like, for the one that was transitioning from primary to secondary, would you send all the information off with the application to apply for that high school, or once they've been accepted?
Oh no, once they've been accepted, they've got to know where they're going. So I can't say I've got someone coming to your school and actually they're not coming just yet, but they're in the process. So once you know where they're going and they've got a spot and that's where they're at, then I would say about midway through grade 6, it's really important to get in contact with them, saying my daughter's coming to you next year, I just need to let you know, and here's a letter from the nurse or the doctor, and you know, this is the situation. It's not a big deal. And I always say it's not a big deal, because I probably would be a millionaire if I had no one is defined by their arthritis or their rheumatological condition. It's just an element of who they are. They've got curly hair, they've got blue eyes, they're tall, they're slim, they're whatever they are, and they've got arthritis. It is not to become so all-consuming. It's not to become their definition of who they are. It's just an element of who they are. Some people are lactose intolerant. You know, some people are whatever. Yes, it requires more effort, more time, more investment, but it does not define the person. So you need to get on top of things without making it all about. Does that make sense? It's that sort of balance of saying, yes, they've got arthritis, but, you know, just blend them into the school as well. But because you need to know this, because they will have bad days, and we will need to do a bit of a camp plan before camp in case, because they're on medications.
Well, we did that this year in with primary school. Her grade 3-4 camp, they went to Rumbug, which is like hilly. And I said, she's not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
No worries, we'll get someone to drive her.
That's right. Now, I've got a girl going off to camp soon, and she's got a rheumatological condition. She doesn't have arthritis, she's got juvenile dermatomyositis, and she cannot do this hike that they're planning. It's like a 5-hour hike. I said, not going to happen. And I said, however, what she can do is go with one of you teachers who are going to the end point and setting up lunch for everyone when they come after their hike, and she can be there and she can be helping set up lunch. Oh, yeah. Whereas sometimes teachers don't think very laterally. They're so focused on the herd and getting them all through that they sometimes forget. But there's always an answer.
Well, we had an issue like the camp weren't going to supply someone to drive her and all that, and our school really pushed, well, then you're not going to get us bid out this type thing. And
So we'll see. But there's usually a way around most things. So it's about being organised and really, you know, it's really about being organised and knowing where things are and that sort of stuff. And again, you know, if they're on a biologic and it's an injectable, you want to try and work out, you know, for holidays. And again, make sure you've got all your stuff when you go on holidays. Make sure you've got your travel letter. Make sure you've got all your bits and pieces.
So that's, because I mean, that's the other thing, like Eliza and I, we're thinking of going to Bali.
Go.
And I'm like, oh my God, but she's got to take these injections. They've got to stay cold and...
That's why we have travel packs, and that's why we've got travel packs that can do long haul flights. But what we do often say is ring the airline beforehand and let them know that this is the medication and will they have a fridge. Some flights do and some flights don't. They won't put it in their food fridge, but some flights do have a separate fridge for those things.
Or they'll just give you a bag of ice to stick it in.
Yeah.
So who do you, like, the other thing is, like, who do you contact to find out whether you need special permission for that medication?
You don't need special permission, you need a letter. And I would suggest you always need a letter. With anything with a needle, you need a letter. And I always say you carry it on yourself. I don't care if you lose your luggage, you can stay in the same clothes. Those medicines are not easy to get. They don't come easy. So you can lose everything, but your passport and your medicine, I'm happy.
If you go on our website, there's a thing of tips for travelling with medications, and it's got a whole list of people you can contact. Some countries, I know in Japan, they're very fussy about medications, and we actually spoke to someone at the embassy before we went to Japan and got a letter from them to say it was all right for us to bring the medication in. So different countries do have some...
Yeah, we've never had any...
Japan in a week, so that's good.
We've
I've
never
got
had...
medication for my son, something completely different as well as my daughter. So.
Yeah, but they often do. But sometimes I always say it's better to have a letter because, as I say, put the letter in, the pack with everything, especially with your needles.
Yeah.
because you know can't be taking needles on a
And
plane
it's
without
not-
it.
Yeah.
No one's ever been stopped. No one's ever had it removed. No one's ever been questioned.
We've never
I'm
been
type 1 diabetic.
Yeah.
And I've been overseas several times. I always have a letter, touch wood, I've never had to use it, but as long as you declare what you've got and what it's for,
That
it's
is.
My-
medical,
my-
you know,
my-
they're
my
fine.
older daughter is
Yeah,
really
they're
good.
fine.
Great pleasure in saying, you're going to end up in the Bali jail.
No.
No, they've seen it all before.
Mm.
It's not new to customs,
Yeah.
but the reality is if you don't have a supporting letter, you can be in a bit of trouble, and they might take your medicine off you. That's the last thing you want, because then you're going to flare while you're on holidays and not enjoy it.
But Emble is also able to be kept out of the fridge, isn't it?
Yeah,
She's
It
on
depends.
Anakindra.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
and again, it's a bit different, but
So-
yeah, some can, but we try not to tell that to people.
Oh, dear, sorry.
Yeah. Because what happens is they take out the fridge, then that does stay out the fridge for too long, and then it does have to be chucked. So we always say don't take it out of the fridge until the day you're prepared to use it.
Right.
Not very good.
No offence, but I do speak to lots of parents from lots of different walks of life, and I always go with the simplest, kiss.
Yeah.
Kiss it.
Simple.
Yeah. So, yeah. But are there any specific questions about your kids' school situations, issues, concerns?
I've got a question. So we don't have a diagnosis at the moment. We're trying muscle relaxants and then pain medication. So we're on a couple of 6-week trials, but 18 months of chronic pain. And it's definitely an issue with activities, like there was a hike for Cubs on the weekend, and yeah, she's dealt with 2 days of pain since. So
Did she particularly want to do it, or did you?
yeah, it was her best friend's, hike for finishing Cubs. So she absolutely wanted to go and do it.
Oh,
Alita
bless.
carried her backpack for the second half, but she's still in pain.
Yeah,
from
of
that.
course.
So does that change your
No.
communication?
No, not at all. They're being seen by a doctor, they're being managed by someone. I write a letter. We have a lot of kids that don't have necessarily diagnosis at the moment. We say, I've got one kid who we just can't work it out, and we just say, under our care,
Yeah.
receiving treatment for, has to spend time, lots of pain, has to be listened to, needs to be respected. So long as they're under somebody, a letter can be written that simply says, this is our patient under our care, and at the moment she is suffering from significant muscle pains and issues. Whilst we are working on finding a diagnosis, we can tell you that she is unable to participate in high intensity sport, and she must be believed, and we don't want her sitting on the floor, and we don't want this. So it doesn't really matter what their diagnosis is. It doesn't have to be a complete clear-cut diagnosis at all. As long as they're being managed, and I've often spoken to schools to say, we still don't know what it is, but we're still treating, It's not that easy, and as most of you know, probably before your diagnosis, it took a long time to probably get the diagnosis. It's sort of a very common story that they then go off to the doctors will say, oh, nothing's wrong. Oh, they might have a virus. Oh, it's growing pains. Oh, go to the physio. Go and do some swimming. Oh, it's just, and then eventually, fast forward 9 months, a year, sometimes even longer, they come to us and go, oh, I know what you've got. Yeah, textbook. Or they come to us because rheumatology is like the end of the road for a lot of people. We deal with diseases that are considered quite uncommon. So what's considered rare in the outside world, like JIA, is uncommon. It's 1 in 800 to 1,000 kids. It's uncommon. We don't call it rare though. But JIA is our bread and butter. So if our most bread and butter is an uncommon disease, can you imagine the other stuff that we work with? So our bread and butter is uncommon. So we're used to it. And a lot of our patients don't always fit perfectly in the box, but we know there's something wrong with them because we know how they're functioning. We can very easily do our range of movements and our pains and our management, and we can say, no, this is not normal. Whilst it may not be this or it may not be that, this is not a healthy picture, and there's something wrong, so you need to stay under us and trial this and trial that. And obviously with all the medications there are side effects as well,
And that's how the problem right now is blurry vision to the point where she can't read.
Yeah.
And she loves books, so.
I'm going to say if that doesn't pass over, this is not a successful trial for you. So, but yeah, definitely, it doesn't have to necessarily be arthritis, it just needs to say, got a condition, we're looking into it, we're attempting to diagnose it, we're managing it with a series of medications and other therapies, and we are asking you as a school to A, B, C, D, E, And again, if there's a problem with it, that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable for the school not to listen to you. Just not okay. So you need to get together with them and have a discussion and say, how can you help me? How can I help you? how can we make this a positive experience for our child while they're at school? You know, we want to really get them to enjoy the full school experience, really get them to enjoy it all, and what can we do for you? And if not, there is always an escalation process, always, and you need to use it. And sometimes it's as simple as a phone call asking a simple letter. Other times we need to go into the school and have a visit. You know, there's one school that just didn't get it. I spoke to one teacher, I'll never forget, it was about 4 years ago, and I rang and I spoke to this guy who was the wellbeing coordinator, and I said, you know, we've got this patient, she was maybe 8 at the time, and I said, you know, she's just been diagnosed with juvenile idiopathic arthritis, and you know what he said to me? Oh, kids don't get arthritis.
Our PE teacher.
And I said to him, really?
Oh, God.
I said, really? Who's been paying my wage then? I work in paediatric rheumatology. Who's paying my wage then if kids don't get arthritis? And then I said to him, I'm just going to... And I said, look, I think I'm going to come in. So I went in and did an interview for the school, and he said it again. And it was really interesting because he was so confident that he was right. And a few people at the table just looked at him. And I said to him, you know, I'm just going to stop you there. I'm going to ask you to step away from the table and take out your phone and Google the words juvenile arthritis.
You're a dickhead.
Just Google it. I said, just Google it. If it comes up blank and there's nothing from any reputable places or any reputable institutions, I'll believe you. And I said to him, you need to leave the table. I can't have a discussion when you're telling me that what I'm saying is not true, is not real. It's real, and I need you to educate yourself first. So go sit, Google.
I love you.
And did he?
Yeah, he did. And he came back and, oh yeah.
When Eliza started, we had an older gentleman for a PE teacher. Yeah, darling, get it. And kept making her do PE. And I went up and spoke to the principal because I wasn't working at the school at the time. And he sat him down in front of me and blasted him.
Yeah, it's just, so we still do get old school attitudes sometimes, but that's not acceptable. So you need to escalate that. So if you find something that's not working for your child, not working for you, you need to escalate. You know, and that's where your nurses provide a really good resource for you. Otherwise we can tell you how to do it yourself if you want to. But I do think it's really good that you have a communication with a point and a classroom teacher or a coordinator, and you know to tell them what the issues are. You know, and sometimes I would often say, look, at the moment, you know, it's usually the knees and the ankles that hurt, and then you can say, oh, guess what? Just had a flare, but it's new joints. Now we've got wrists and elbows involved. So then now, obviously, knees and ankles not a problem when you're sitting in class doing schoolwork and playing and stuff. Only a bit more of a problem for the playground and for sports. But then if it's your wrists and your hands and stuff, you've got more problems with schoolwork. So it really does depend which joints are flaring when and how. If you've got a pain situation, again, you've got to work out what's good and what's bad. But I still say it's so crucial for your child to attend school in some way, shape or form, because for their mental health and for their sense of belonging and for their socialisation, it's just crucial. If you've got arthritis as a kid, I reckon you're much better off publicly, because all your imaging is done for free, or your OT, or your physio, or your blood work. You don't pay for any of that. And it's all under the one roof, right? And I'd say wherever you live, you either go to Monash or the Children's, because they're the only two places that deal with publicly paediatric rheumatology. So the Royal Children's or Monash Children's. And depending on where you live, go to the one that's closest.
So if you've been at one, Leanne, and you move, or if you've all
We've had lots of people swap.
Yeah.
Heaps.
And you can just
Yeah.
who you're organised.
You speak to your doctor, who you see, you say...
GP or roomie?
Well, roomie can refer to roomie, so that's fine. And we often get that when people do move, or they've had a fallout with their doctor, or they've just had enough or whatever. They often come across, or we can send people over there. Like we've had people live in Parkville that are with us, and I'm like, you do realise... And it was because the wait list for them was way longer than our wait list is 3 or 4 months for a non-urgent. Theirs is like 12 months. So they come to us, and then once they're in the system and we've got them sorted, I go, would you like to go live closer to, you know? And then I flick them back. And they get people that live in Clayton, or, you know, they flick them to us. So you can move. It's not a problem to move.
Because I just feel like we're relying too heavily on our GP in between appointments with Peter. And I don't feel like we've got someone...
You don't, and that's one of the problems of being in public. That's one of the problems of being in private, is not having access to the additional support.
And I mean, there's been times when I've emailed you on weekends or message you on weekends late at night and not expecting you to reply, and you're, okay, take it to the hospital or do this. I'm like, oh, I think she replied.
Still working.
I do. I'm on all the time. But, I just, most people as a general rule, don't call me at weird
Unless-
one flowers unless it's really urgent. And then my theory is, well, if it is really urgent, you do need that advice. And again, as a parent, particularly of a younger child or a newly diagnosed, I always say, when people are newly diagnosed, they're like my best friends. I hear from them all the time because they've got lots of questions and they worry and they don't know. And when they start a new biologic, I get lots of questions. Like I had a mum text me today saying, he's got a bit of a cough, can I give him his methotrexate? And I was like, does he have a temperature? No. Has he stopped eating? No. Is he still weak? Yeah. Well, then he can have his methotrexate. But they don't know because we always say when you're sick, withhold your biologic. And what does sick mean? You know what I mean? I try and say it's when you're on antibiotics so you have a temperature, but some people aren't sure and it's better to be safe than sorry. Otherwise they withhold the med, they don't know, they end up going to emergency for something that doesn't need to be done, So you do have a nurse support. I am definitely much more available than the Royal Children's Hospital nurses, there's no doubt about that.
I've never met the ones at the Royal Children's and all the
Really?
time I've been going there.
You met me when you were at Monash.
I know.
See, and Zayna moved over for different reasons because he's got other comorbidities and his specialists are based at the Royal Children's, so it was easier for him to have everything under one umbrella at the kids because we don't
it's
have...
funny because I found when she was first diagnosed, our first face that we saw was the nurse, was you and Anne at the time.
Yeah. So, and I always think, I always put myself and I think, well, if that was me, I'd want somebody who's got a bit of knowledge to support me and answer my questions, and just knowing they're there gives a level of safety blanket. Do you know what I mean? That helps, And I also try very hard to say to everyone, we integrate this into your life. This is just part of the process, and and getting used to blood tests is a big thing. I have a lot of kids that I do blood tests with, and the first time it's hysteria, absolute hysteria.
Oh yeah.
But now we work through it, and it's a process. And I've been now, with the greatest respects, this lady's son likes me to come to his blood test now just to sit. I do nothing anymore, and he was really bad and high anxiety next level, and it's appropriately so. Someone's coming at you with a needle and you don't really get it, and it's appropriate. Now he just likes me to sit there. He don't do anything. He looks, he rolls up his arm.
He won't do it without you. We've tried.
Yeah, but sometimes Eliza was scared because when we were getting the diagnosis and she was in the ER, the ward nurses were a bit rough and they frightened her.
And a lot of people have very bad, and especially in the beginning, I don't mean their daughter, and probably I'll meet her at some point, the beginning is the worst because they're so unwell usually when they first come. No one's ever usually as sick as at diagnosis. They are poked and prodded. They see so many people and they get shunted from pillar to post with a whole lot of people. And I work really hard to say, okay, that was then, this is now, moving forward, this is how it's going to be, And I've seen a lot of kids. I mean, there was a little girl the other day, she was like 8, and she was excited to have her blood test because she likes the VR goggles, and I give her a Freddo frog at the end. So she gets really excited to have her blood test because she knows what's happening at the end. And, she's much, much better. But it's a process because the reality is if you've got arthritis, you're never going to not have blood tests. You have to get used to them. No matter how young they are, they have to get used to them. This is not, which is why when people often say, oh, can't you use nitrous oxide? You know what we use? I say, no, not for blood tests, not on my patients.
We've been to Monash 3 times for blood tests, and it was not a very good process of trying to book it in, trying to get it organised.
Did you go to the children's one or the other one?
In the children's section, that's where they told me to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, they didn't offer any help or support or anything.
No, never do your first blood test ever down there.
It was horrible.
Yeah, no, never do your first blood test.
The last time, which was a few weeks ago, I took her to Dorowitz around the corner in Croydon, and I had to hold her down. I had to put nummy cream on her. I had to hold her down. She screamed. It was horrible.
When you need your next blood test, you need to actually do it with me. The reality is our blood ladies at Monash Children, I know I'm digressing a bit, there's some that are fabulous, and then we often get ones in that just shouldn't be there.
Vampires.
The last couple of
them, really horrible.
No,
seriously, that lady.
The children's are the same.
She argues with me. I walk in and I look at her tray and I go, no vacuumators for my patients. I say, butterfly and syringe, thank you. And she looks at me, I said, it's not open for discussion. And then she just looks at me and she swaps it over. That's the grumpy one. But I put in a report about her, I didn't want her back.
At the children's, they've got to use butterflies, And Zoden goes, I don't like them, and you're not doing them. You take all the blood at once. And they go, no, we don't do that. And he goes, well, you're not doing my blood.
You've got to be flexible.
So now we don't do it then.
Yeah, you've got to be flexible. If the child knows how they want their bloods taken because they've had years and years of it, you need to listen to them.
3 to 13.
Yeah, you need to listen to them.
10
You know what
years
I
of
mean?
experience. He knows how.
And if
wants
he
his blood
tells you
done.
that, Josh is the same. He likes to count to a number, and it's not always the same number. He'll tell you what the number is. When you get to that number, he expects you to put in the needle.
I'm ready.
But he will pick a number, and he'll tell you that number, and you listen.
It's like Eliza when they tell her to look away. She will refuse to look away. She wants to see what's going on.
And it makes people, I've got a child that does that too, and that's okay. So then again, I often say to people, you forget that we're dealing with a person. So I say, would you like to look or you don't want to look?
I know Zoden loves the boxing.
Yeah.
It's different. Yeah.
And you've got to do that. I'm really sorry you've had a bad experience. I promise if you come with me, you'll have a good experience.
Yeah, I don't know why Peter hasn't said your name before. Like he's
Well, because he
he's like,
can't.
oh, she's so fantastic, you'll love her. She's better. Like she does almost like he goes, she does better than I do. Like she goes,
So
he goes,
yeah, you
couldn't speak highly
can't
enough,
because I
but,
don't officially work for him. I mean, he's my boss because he's the head of paediatric rheumatology in Monash Children's. But in his private capacity, I'm not his private nurse.
Because I've really felt
reality
for the last
is-
8 months, just no support, no nothing.
Yeah.
Just trying to Google
Which is one of the
everything,
reasons I go
like-
back to my original, is that when you are paediatric, I think you're all a lot better off in the public system. A, because you're much more supported. B, because everything happens in the one place. And C, it doesn't cost you anything. And arthritis in the public world can cost a lot of money in the private world. Between your OTs, your physios, your x-rays, your ultrasounds, your blood tests, it builds up. It's a lot of money, yeah? So I always personally say, but when you get to adult world, then you need to go private because the adult world, you can go public, but you've got to find a new level of patience.
Or get the first appointment.
Or get the very first
Yeah.
appointment, yeah. And it can be a bit tricky, and you don't get that much support because you're an adult. You should be self-sufficient. You should be able to speak for yourself. Which comes back to what I say is we need to advocate and empower our children to step up and talk up because they're going to become adults. And you'll have one appointment with us, and then the next month the appointment's going to be in the adult world, and they're like chalk and cheese. So really encouraging the person with the condition to know where they're at and what they're doing and be able to speak and advocate for themselves is really important, whatever the condition may
Public
be.
system too, if they've got multiple, like juvenile arthritis is not Jen's only
Yeah.
chronic condition,
Yeah.
to be able to have that one-stop shop and have people communicate,
Yeah.
we found invaluable.
Definitely. And you've also got to remember in adults, 1 in 3 adults have some form of arthritis. And we're comparing to 1 in 800. So the public clinics swell. And so you really are a number. And it's okay if you're in remission and you're doing really well and you only need them to write your scripts for you a couple of times a year, or you just, you can get in when you flare and stuff. And so that works really well. But if you're not in a solid remission state when you're over 18 or finished school, because again, it's different. At the Royal Children's, I don't know how old you are when
Until you finish school.
so we do the same thing until you finish school. So you can be 9, 10. We've got some 19-year-olds still because they're still doing school. But then we transition you over, and we try and transition quite nicely because we're all at Monash Health. But it doesn't always work, and it's a very different environment. But I do believe, my personal opinion, I'm not touting for anyone, my personal opinion is that you'll get a much more comprehensive, holistic care and support when you're in the public system.
And the kids are calmer because they get used to the environment and it's the same place, and let's face it, Monash Children's is
It's a lovely
beautiful environment.
Take her to Monash Children's for bloods.
Oh, compared to old yucky place.
Stuck behind the palliative
That place, it was called Special Medicine, and I used to say, and you'll go past this beautiful old brick house, this beautiful mansion, and behind that you'll see this great little
And the
one-story
kids have to
building.
walk
That's where we are.
an hour to get there.
Oh, no, it's not
If you
nice.
didn't have a distance.
Yeah, so we're quite lucky. But yeah, no worries. I can help. So, because what year are you in now?
10.
Okay. Are you doing any 1-2s?
No, not yet.
Okay, so the next year.
Yeah.
And have you had it, is school aware and they're all over it and they're doing, and I'll have a chat with you later, but I'm quite happy to advocate for you. It's really not a big deal. So, yeah, because I like Pete. And I do it for Angela. I do it for Angela, Georgie and Bill as well. So the 4 consultants that I work with at Monash. So I'm more than happy to. And I think it's really important. And I say people sort of, in the beginning, speak to me a lot, and then I only hear from them randomly when they've got a can you send me a result, or can you speak to the school about pants, or can you tell me whether I should or shouldn't, can you write me a letter? And that's, no worries.
We had Tash.
No,
Natalie.
Nat.
The OT.
yes.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
lovely.
Yeah.
We had her. What? Sorry, I thought it was
She's
Tash.
great.
We had Nat write a fabulous letter a couple of years ago.
So that's what I was going to say. That's what,
Each year, you know.
Yeah.
Go back and.
So again, you want to point it back with that. It's not a problem. So we have occupational therapists as a general rule. Wherever you're seeing your occupational therapist, are great liaisons with schools. Occupational therapists can often go out to the school and they do a walk around. So where's this child's classroom and where's the cafeteria and how do they get to the bathroom? And they ask and they actually look at the oh no, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. Why have you got a turning door handle? They should all be like this. Swap it.
Steps.
So and steps and things like that. But I don't think about those things because I'm a nurse. But your occupational therapist will do that for you, and they will say, "Oh no, that's not going to happen." Do you know what I mean? So use an occupational therapist to see you. I think that everyone should have an assessment with an occupational therapist or a physiotherapist at some point, and they will tell you what you can and can't do, and what you should and shouldn't be doing.
So that's where you're lucky, because next year we have also not only do we have Maddie starting on Eliza, but we have a girl starting with Rex next year as well.
Oh wow!
So our school's been wheelchair access.
Yeah, I didn't know about it. I cried when I read it.
Rex is
She's non-verbal, non-mobile.
most Rex kids don't
Yeah.
last. So they're 16 as a general rule.
Yeah.
So be happy you've got arthritis.
Yes.
Now that's a terrible thing to say, because at the end of the day, we've all got to, we've got to make the most of everything. We've got to, and support is really useful, which is why MSK is really, really good, because, and people should use them more. And we do give it in our packets, the first email address, because you can't get enough knowledge, you can't get enough support, you can't speak to enough people, you can't find enough support. Some people don't need it and don't want it, and that's okay, but for those who need it, it's out there and it's available, which is fantastic.
I found that even though Eliza's had it for 9 years and she's not fled, this is her first fled in like 4 or 5 years, straight onto the website and looking for the information, I can't do this, so it's
useful.
It's a refresher as well.
And it wasn't like that, juvenile arthritis has come, you've got to understand, I will tell you 40 years ago, and that's not that long, is it? Yeah? 40 years ago, before we started using these medications, right, we've only been using methotrexate for about 30 years maybe, 30, 35. Before we had biologics have only been available relatively recently, and again, we've got 3 biologics now available, 2 for everybody and 1 for a new one that just came on the market. Tocilizumab is now available for polyarticular JIA as an injectable rather than having to come in for an infusion. So other than that, and there's so many biologics on the adult market, we've only got very few. But 40 years ago, if you were a kid diagnosed with arthritis, this was what we would have to say, is that we can't fix it, we can't help it, we have no medicines for it. Slowly your child's joints are going to erode and then they will need joint replacements. Then they will end up in a wheelchair crippled. So they will have terrible morbidity, and as a result they will probably die young. And that's what we used to say. And we knew exactly what was going to happen to them, and we knew the process that was going to happen to them, but we had nothing to give them other than pain relief. And now our medications have the benefit of being pain relievers, but also have the benefit of stopping that immune system, and stopping all our, IgG cells and regenerating and stuff like that. So, we've come such a long way in such a short period of time, so that now we're at that stage where I was just saying to someone before that arthritis is not even recognised on NDIS, JIA, because there's no need for it, because we expect full remission. And when you expect someone to get into full remission, there'll be no NDIS for you. So
we're lucky because he's got autism as well, so we get all the AIA stuff thrown in with his autism.
Bonus.
So we get hydrotherapy and
which is fantastic. So
OT and all that.
And so you can
got autism.
And it's that's right. So he gets it for his autism, and it's a bonus to JIA. But JIA as a standalone condition is not going to attract any NDIS.
Because it's now claimed as not lifelong. It's got to be lifelong.
No, it is lifelong, but it's in remission. Because it's not going to give them a permanent disability. It's not going to stop them from functioning at full capacity.
I know there's still a lot of fight going on about this one.
Yeah.
Because they've let mental health you go up and down too.
My belief is, this is another one of my pearls of wisdom, everyone that gets diagnosed with any chronic illness should automatically receive mental health support. Because from the day you are given a diagnosis, your life is changed. And even if it's in theory, not practice, now you know you've got something. And I think that with any chronic illness, you should receive what I call diagnosis acceptance. I made that one up.
I think the whole family.
But, not just the child. No, not just the child. Parents as well. Some parents don't need it and they're all right, but I think everyone should. But reality is funding is a massive issue. With push and push and push for outpatients to have a social worker attached to them, so that outpatients can get a social worker, so I can refer families that need that extra bit of support. Because at the moment, all I can say to you is, use me, and if you need more, get yourself a mental health plan from your GP for some reduced sessions, and I'll give you, depending on what your issue is and where you live, I've got people that I recommend to see. Because I think having a significant diagnosis, you've got to process it. You've got to accept it. You've got to deal with it. You've got to realise that things are different from now, and you're always going to be looking with a slightly different eye at your child. And your child's going to have to think twice before they, go off to Borneo, when you finish school and you want to go trek through the Himalayas or meet the Dalai Lama or something ridiculous like that. I'll always say, don't do that, please. Because, the immunisations for trekking through forests, they're still live vaccines. Yeah. And if you're on any kind of DMAT or BDMAT, you're not going to be having a live vaccine, which means you could go overseas and get some tzatziki virus or something. I don't know what they're called.
Isn't that the yogurt dip?
Oh, yeah. Minor details. A dengue. Or something. A zika. Some weird stuff.
Weird.
But yeah, because the reality is, and the other thing is, we do encourage you to get all your immunisations up to date. And if you're on a biologic medicine, there are other immunisations that aren't on the immunisation register, like a lot of meningococcals and things like that. That aren't paraflus, they're not on the thing, but I would recommend you all get them. And if you are on an immunosuppressive medication, be it methotrexate or any of your BDMAs, you can actually get a subsidy for the cost of it if you do it through your hospital, so you won't pay what everyone else pays you.
Because you gave us a list and we looked into them, and some of them were like $140.
If you're on so if you're on immunosuppressants and you get it done at the hospital, we write on an additional comment on immunosuppressant, and then you attract the reduced fee.
Okay.
So just
they additional to the normal immunisations?
Yes, there's a couple more over and above. And we just feel that anyone who is immunosuppressed should have maximum coverage from vaccinations, because obviously being immunosuppressed, it sort of allows you. So there are a few. The meningococcal is probably the primary one. There are a few others, but if you are on immunosuppressive medication and your doctor tells you there is a spot to put it, which will attract a cheaper fee. But I would say just get it done at hospital when you come to your next appointment. I've got a couple of kids coming on Friday for joint injections, and I've got to catch them up on some vaccines. So I've just got them, and I'll do it while they're having their joint injection done. So I love the one girl who we got to put to sleep because was her first lot of joint injections. She was only like 5, and we did lots of joints, and I gave her 7 immunisations. She was under GA, it's all right. I said to her mum, while she's asleep, do you want me to give them all? And she goes, yeah, bang, 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 bang. And I got them all into it. I felt good, and I said to her, thank you, you're welcome. That's my great. When I was giving flu vaccines this year, you're welcome. It's a gift I'm giving you. So I'm just flagging that as an aside, by the way, just, we're thinking mine when you're on immunosuppressions. But any other schooly type questions or any questions, I suppose, because we're just a small group, so we can all ask.
I have one. In terms of mental health, Josh's history of what he's been through, I find that there's a massive void. He's only 8, so he's primary school. A lot of the headspace, they're sort of 12.
Yeah, there's very little for under 12.
There's a void.
Very little for under 12. Yeah. So, because and the reason is, I'll tell you, this is what they explain. So from 12 upwards, anyone can self-refer to Headspace. I highly recommend Headspace. They're fabulous. They're just fabulous. And also most schools at a secondary level have some type of counsellor. Do you have at your school? Yeah. And the secondary school that Eliza's looking at, a lot of schools...
We have, and at our primary school, we have a school psychologist that you can access as well as a chaplain.
Right. So some schools have, but some schools don't. And the primary school, the reason is because they often say it's a different kind of management because you can only talk so much to someone who's 6, 7, 8 or 9 or 10. Their processing, their capacity to appreciate and process the stuff we're trying to tell them when you're older doesn't work. So what we look for mainly is coping strategies and ways of calming them down and helping them feel more settled. And a lot of that is done through your school wellbeing officer or somebody at your school. So they'll say, you know, try the ball, try the this, try the time-out couch, because it's about just getting them to settle down and calm down. But you're right. And the reality is if you want proper assistance at a primary school level for your kid, you have to go outside the school. You have to go beyond the school. Unless you happen to be lucky to school. One of my children, I had 4 kids at 4 schools and only one of their schools had a visiting psychologist, and they would elect. You could say, "I'd like my son to see," and they would decide who would see.
Well, that's what we've just put in place. We went privately, but it's like 6 arms and 4 legs later, and come back in 2 weeks. Come back in 2 weeks, and I'm like, I'm telling you everything, but you're not giving me.
Yeah, and then continuing.
Ready to talk. He's happy to talk.
Yeah,
and we're very open and honest, and have like a survey and find out a lot of stuff. But in the greater space of,
because the reality is, what I also say is the mental health support that we need, either as parents or as a student, is very, very clear. It's not this, oh, my life is falling apart and I'm not coping and I'm not doing well and I can't get out of bed. It's not that generic stuff. It's very tailored. It's, we've been given this diagnosis and we're not coping with it. Please give me some management strategies, some diagnosis acceptance strategies. Tell me what to do when this is frustrating me, or or when he's getting out of hand, or he can feel himself. So you've done excellent with the school. I mean, you've done really well. Again, you've been advocating for your son beautifully with the school, and it's taken a while to get through to them. But now we have a list of do this, do that, do the other, do the other, do the other.